Hello and welcome to the Tech and Sports Podcast. Tech and Sports is a show about how technology is revolutionizing all of the major sports as well as health and fitness. You can find it on your podcast service of choice. My name is Alex Radu and I'm here with the fabulous Mandy Kovacs.
Hi everyone.
This week we are highlighting some cool apps or wearables around health and fitness, plus all the biggest news from the last week, some new apps or wearables that are out this week, and your weekly concussion update. But before we get to that, we would really appreciate it if you would review and rate the Tech and Sports Podcast on iTunes and Google Play or wherever else you get your podcasts from. It really does help us grow the show, and we really appreciate all of the support so far. And with that, sit back and relax, because the Tech and Sports crew is entering the game. All right, Mandy, the news.
All right, so first up is news that the popular health and fitness app MyFitnessPal experienced a security breach last week, and the data of about 150 million accounts were compromised. So the app is owned by Under Armour, and according to the company, information like usernames, email addresses, and passwords may have been affected, but not payment information. And so I know I got an email a couple days ago that my information could have been compromised, so if yours was, you would have probably gotten an email as well at some point in the last week. And I mean, we're hearing about security breaches all the time, so this is really just your friendly reminder to be careful of what you share online.
So I guess my also thing with this is I think this is where data gets a little scarier as well, because this is like your fitness data. So it's like, okay, so it's like we're like all of your runs from the past like year like stolen. Like, I mean, like, does some algorithm out there like have access to how fast you can run a mile and like what your fitness levels are? Because that's, I think, the scary part. And not necessarily like your email address.
Yeah. And think about the marketing opportunities for that too. Like if you're logging what you eat every day and you eat a certain brand of something and that's all logged in this app, like I'm sure you're going to start seeing more advertisements for those types of products.
Yeah, which I mean isn't, I guess, a bad thing if like you do want those products, but
Fair.
It's also like a it's something I feel like you need to opt into first rather than it being stolen. But
yeah, it makes you think.
Yeah, I think it's just also, it's like, well, with fitness data, and I think it's super important that companies like you said here, this app's by Under Armour, to really invest in a lot of security, because this is, I mean, like, it's not just like your email and your personal info, it's also your health data.
Yeah, and they've seen their shares drop quite a bit too because of this. So we'll see if they can recover.
For sure.
All right, next, we talked a week or two ago about how Facebook got exclusive broadcast rights to Wednesday afternoon MLB games, and its first game last week was a little rough, to say the least. So the Mets and Phillies were the guinea pigs for this experimental last Wednesday game, and the first ever digital-only national broadcast, and so apparently it was rife with a bunch of different technical glitches and video freezes. So the video feed was really grainy and pixelated for a lot of people, and some fans even complained that the on-screen scoreboard and stats banner blocked too much of the screen, and so did the comments bar on the side, which apparently was really distracting for a lot of people watching. And so the MLB did issue a statement talking about how important this first step was to making everything work and working out all the kinks, and it did thank the fans for being patient, but I mean, not a lot of them were receptive to that. But one cool thing about the game was that instead of commercial breaks, fans were given short segments about the teams, plus interviews with players and even some notable fans, like comedian Jim Brewer, who was a Mets fan and was in attendance for the game. But the problem with this plan, I think, overall, is that the MLB's fan base is the oldest out of the four big North American sports. I think we've talked about that a couple times. Their average age of viewer is about 57 years old. So we'll really have to see whether this gets fixed and whether fans really like the idea of watching something on Facebook.
Yeah, I mean, it could be part of a way to just get younger fans as well, because it's something, though, I mean, who's on Facebook anymore? But that's why I guess Twitter, but again, who's on Twitter if you're not looking for news? No, but I have nothing else to say, but just to shout out my folks from New Jersey, where I partly grew up, and my buddy Tyler, who did watch this game and texted our group chat about it the whole time.
Oh, God.
So
did he enjoy it?
I think he was just like, oh, this is weird.
Oh. Did he use any of the comments or anything? Because apparently people were getting into fights and stuff. Which,
no,
absolutely is your classic internet comment section.
Sure. No, yeah, I think he's just like, I'm at work and this game's on Facebook. This is weird. And I think that was the end of that.
Interesting. And then, I mean, so you mentioned Twitter. So the MLB has also renewed their streaming deal with Twitter. And so this deal, the MLB Twitter handle will live stream one weekday game per week, in addition to all the real-time game highlights that it does already. And so this started last season. The MLB Twitter streamed games on Friday nights and then eventually moved to Tuesday night games. And these streams will be simulcast from the team's local TV broadcast and will be free to all Twitter users. But unfortunately, this is US only. So our Canadian listeners, I'm sorry about that. And so the first 4 games in this Twitter deal, the first one was April 5th with the Rangers at the A's. And then the next one is April 10th with Tampa versus the White Sox. April 19th with defending World Series champions, the Houston Astros against the Mariners, and April 25th with the LA Angels at Houston.
I believe that's the Anaheim Angels. Or the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim, whatever they call themselves now.
Okay. And then next up is just a quick little hit. We have some off-season NFL news. So apparently every team in the league will be rolling out new websites that will do a better job of optimizing and formatting content for mobile devices. So the San Francisco 49ers were the first team to launch their new site last week, followed by the Seattle Seahawks, and then the rest of the league will be all launching soon before training camp is the goal.
I think this is good because sports websites notoriously are really, really bad.
Yes.
And I'm glad the NFL's doing it, but the NHL needs a new one.
Oh, God, the NHL's needs so much work.
I mean, the NBA needs new ones. I'm sure baseball needs new ones. I'm sure what the NFL is going to do right now is going to be old in 6 months. So, I mean, hey, whatever.
Yeah. And then another quick update from the NFL. Apparently, the Kansas City Chiefs are moving to a completely paperless future. So the team has announced that fans should expect 100% mobile ticketing in the upcoming seasons. So right now, about half the league is mobile only, and the Kansas City Chiefs will just be another team doing so. The team's president, Mark Donovan, said that approximately 40% of fans attending Chief games last season used tickets on their phones instead of paper or printed tickets. And the team hopes to have that number increase to about 70% this coming season, which will speed up game entrances and before it really fully implements the mobile system. Okay, and then next up, the 82nd Masters tournament just wrapped up on Sunday, and IBM's supercomputer Watson gave us all the coolest highlights. So apparently IBM's AI program collected an automated and personalized highlight reels so that fans never missed a moment from the tournament. So Watson apparently watched all the live stream video of the tournament and sectioned off clips by intelligently recognizing the beginning and end of a player's shot. So it would then identify the player, the hole that the golfer was playing, and which shot was being taken by leveraging its image recognition capabilities. And so to determine what was a highlight-worthy shot or not, it would examine the audio track to gauge the roar of the crowd. It would also look at the player's gestures, like a fist bump or a hands in the air, or even emotions on a player's face, as well as looking through a transcript of the broadcast commentary to find any keywords that could really indicate excitement or anything extraordinary. So Watson could then score the highlights and index them in order to make the lives of the Masters digital team a little easier and also help fans access the content faster as well.
So what I'm really, really excited about this is for all of the really non-highlights that it's going to pull up. Just because it'll be we know it's going to happen. Like it's going to pull something that's totally not a highlight, but that's really funny.
Maybe,
but no, it's
I
cool.
have more faith in it than you do, I think.
I just think that always tends to happen. It's it's gonna be 90% really, really good, but then 10% just hilarious.
Yeah, just a random little
Yeah, it'll be for some reason it pulls some animal that has a lot of emotion in a pond.
Like a gator. I don't know where the Masters are played, but
or like a goose or a duck.
Maybe.
But no, I mean that's cool. I'd like to see more of this happening in just sports in general.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think Watson is being used a lot in golf and tennis right now.
Yeah.
But we haven't really seen it much in anything else. So maybe we will soon enough.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah. And then now we have some U.S. soccer news. So an Irish sports tech company called Stat Sports has scored more than $1 billion deal with the U.S. Soccer Federation over the next 5 years that will see millions of American players, including the national men's and women's teams, using its monitoring devices to aid their performance on the pitch. So this is the world's largest player data monitoring program, apparently, and it's also believed to be the biggest contract ever signed in the elite sports wearables market. So the company Stat Sports was founded in 2007 in Ireland, and it already has supplied its technology to teams in Europe, including Arsenal, Man City, Man United, Barcelona, and Juventus. They're also used by the Irish Rugby Football Federation, as well as hockey, football, and basketball teams in lower level leagues all around Ireland. And so their flagship device is called the Apex, which is a vest, and it's positioned between the shoulder blades during training and games. And it captures thousands of data points per second in real time for everything from speed and distance run to whether an athlete is favoring their left or right side and how that affects their running efficiency. So all that information can be streamed directly to a phone or a tablet or even a smartwatch. So coaches can implement it into training schedules a little bit more easily. And the company has about 50 employees right now, but they're hoping to grow to around 300 people in the near future because of this deal. So, I mean, all the best to them.
Yeah, I mean, this is cool. I mean, I'll make the correct joke right off the bat of hopefully this means that the U.S. men's team can actually make a World Cup next time.
Oh, no, that was in my next story. That's okay.
Well, hey, I mean, we could talk about it then, too.
Yep.
But no, this is cool. I think, again, we talk about all the little data points. Is like, we're probably honestly not going to see the majority of this info, but it is, we talk so much about how it's those tiny things that can help correct muscle memory that you wouldn't know otherwise, whether it be a bad habit or just something that you've developed over a decade or 2 or 3 of playing a sport. So I think this is really cool, and to see it now coming to soccer, especially in North America, hopefully get U.S. soccer. When U.S. soccer does better, that's better for the sport of soccer in North America. So
yeah, for sure.
You know, it's I mean, the women clearly don't need it because they're the best team in the world, but the men certainly do.
They need all the help they can get. I mean, I'm actually really interested in this on a personal level too, because I've always thought that when I run, I favor one side more than the other, and it like kind of affects my back. I don't know.
I'd love to know which knee I favor more.
Because you had ACL surgery, didn't you?
On my left one, but I'd like to argue that my right one's just as bad. So.
Maybe we can get our hands on this. We'll let you all know. All right, and then our last news, continuing with the U.S. men's soccer, they did not qualify for the upcoming World Cup in Russia, as Alex mentioned. But genetic testing company 23andMe has teamed up with Fox Sports to try and ramp up American excitement for the big tournament anyways. So they're trying to link the two by saying to get a DNA test and you might discover where most of your blood comes from, and it might be one of the countries that did qualify and that you should cheer for them. And so the tagline is root for your roots, which I find both amusing and clever. But Alex, I kind of figured that you would enjoy this one a little bit.
I mean, I really like the tagline. I think it's great. It was a good opportunity. Someone took it.
Right? Shoot your shot, man.
Yeah, shoot your shot. You know, you got to shoot your shot with that stuff. That's amazing. Otherwise, it's ridiculous. But and I have nothing else to add. But that's a great Logan. Great marketing. Great copy. Good job to that person.
I feel like some like white nationalist is gonna like do this, and they're gonna get some really bad results that may not go with what they think. But
well, hey, you know.
Down with white nationalism.
Sure, yeah. That's let's turn this podcast into that.
Yeah, anyways, all right, that's it for the news today. Thanks, everyone. We're going to move on to new apps and wearables.
All right, so for new apps and wearables to this week, we're going to start with kind of projections for the next few years and how this market's really, really growing. So whenever we do talk about wearables, especially just in a consumer sense, we always talk about wearables that you wear on your wrist, whether it's a smartwatch or whatever. So, well, according to a new report from Juniper Research, as the wearable market grows to 2020, it won't just be wrist wearables, but smart clothes and glass-type wearables will be a big part of growing this market. So according to the report, the two categories of smart glasses and smart clothing are expected to be the fastest growing segment of wearable shipments. For example, Juniper predicts that in 2020 there will be 7 million smart clothing shipments, and just 2 years later that number will jump up to 30 million shipments. Ultimately, the report suggests that by 2020 the connected clothing industry will hit $1 billion. So the report also says that software will drive this market rather than hardware, like we have seen. This could be apps and such, and this is probably due to the fact that people aren't updating their Fitbit or Apple Watch or whatever every single year. And Apple even says that they expect Apple Watch devices to have 3 years of use by their first owners. Just because, I mean, you're not realistically going to buy a new watch every year. It's not a phone where like you need to have the best thing, and also they don't really change that much to justify buying it every year. So I think that's going to be interesting to see how software, and whether it's subscription based or just a one-time buy, probably more subscription based, is going to really affect this market.
I'm really interested in that the connected clothing industry will hit $1 billion by 2020. Like that's only 2 years away, and I feel like the connected clothing industry is quite small right now. Like that's really only geared towards like athletes or professional teams. So the fact that they're expecting it to grow that much in just 2 years and really become a more like mainstream consumer thing, like that's a bold prediction.
See, the thing is this is worldwide. So it's not just North America. or it's, North America, Europe, South America. I mean, I can list all the continents and the big places, add China.
Yeah, we're actually turning into a geography podcast.
We're also a geography podcast now too. So it's $1 billion sounds like a lot. I think we're trained to think that sounds like a lot,
Fair.
but really it's only 7 million smart clothing shipments. And then that's why, to me, when it says 2022, it's going to, nearly quadruple. I think that's the thing that's super crazy, the 2 years following. So really in 4 years, it's going to be huge.
Absolutely.
All right, so next up we have a new fan engagement app for Leaf fans. So Mandy actually got to speak to the guys behind this new way to engage with the Toronto Maple Leafs. So from what I understand, this is a new platform developed by two folks who are working under a Ryerson University incubator, and it's a fantasy-based fan engagement tool that is currently a web app, and it's currently titled Fan Battle, and it's in public beta. Mandy, you spoke with one of the founders, Sal, about it. So what can you tell us about it?
Right. Yeah. Like you said, I got a chance to speak with Sal, who was able to explain the app a bit more and give me some of the details about it. So like you said, it is a free web-based app called Fan Battle that's in public beta right now at fanbattle.ca. And it'll have a hard launch probably in time for the 2018-2019 hockey season, which is usually in September or October. And so what they've really tried to do was make a more engaging fantasy hockey platform, because there's been a lot of feedback recently from people saying that they're tired of the traditional fantasy format where, you join a league at the beginning of the season and you update your lineup every day or every week for the whole season. But a lot of people lose interest in that kind of thing. And I mean, I can totally vouch for that on a personal level too. I mean, I'm in a couple fantasy hockey pools, and I think I checked where I was in the standings last week for the first time since November. And surprisingly, I wasn't in last place. But I mean, I also joined a baseball pool recently, and I can guarantee you I'll forget about that by next week too. So they're really trying to combat that loss of interest. So basically, Fan Battle lets you opt in and out for every game. And just like any other fantasy platform, you can go onto the website, you enter a pool, and you choose a team lineup before every game, and you just win points based on who scores and if they're on your lineup. And if you win the pool that you're in, you get Leafs tickets. So it kind of adds a local emotional aspect to it as well, especially now that the playoffs are really ready to full swing, So right now, this is unfortunately only in Toronto because that's where the company is based, but they say that global domination is somewhere down the road, so we'll have to look out for that. But the fun part about it is that because it's in beta right now, they're also kind of hosting an impromptu contest of who can find the biggest bug or technical glitch in the app so far. So if you can screenshot it and send it to them, you get a prize or points for the upcoming season, and you can really help the app get better and have a better launch in September. So to all our Toronto fans, you should really go check this out. Once again, that's fanbattle.ca.
Yeah, so I think that's really interesting. So I really like the prize aspect of it. It really speaks to the potential sports gambler in me. And I think that's cool because that is super easy. It's super chill. I gave up on fantasy sports except for fantasy football for a while ago. I have no time, nor the attention span. So I think that's really cool because it's definitely, if I were to look at my LA sports teams or even, the Toronto sports teams, I always enjoy going to a Raptors or a Leafs game. So just being able to potentially get free tickets by spending maybe 30 seconds to a minute picking who you think's your lineup for just one game, because it's one team. It's not even that hard of a choice. It's not even every day because they're not playing every day.
Exactly. There's no subscription or any sort of sign up for that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which I really like that.
I think that's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and one last quick app news. The Leafs and Raptors have partnered with traffic app Waze so that fans can get directions to the Air Canada Centre through the MLSE app. So, Mandy, you spoke with Mike Wilson, the Canadian country manager for Waze. So what did he have to say?
Yeah, so this is part of Waze's global event partner program, and they have hundreds of different partners across the world that have integrated Waze into their respective sports teams' mobile apps so fans can get to their games a little easier. They have partners within the MLS, the MLB, NFL, even marathon companies and festivals, you name it. They work with any sort of event coordinator. And so with Waze integrated into the Leafs and Raptors apps, anyone can use it to get directions to the arena. They can see parking around the area and really how bad traffic is and how long it'll take them to get there. And so they've been working on this in Toronto for about a year now, and it's officially launched as of April 2nd, just in time for the playoffs. And Mike told me that the feedback has already been really great. So for anyone living in Toronto again, or even in cities like Atlanta or Detroit where they have partnerships existing already, you can use this now.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's great to see that this is happening in Toronto. Great to know it's also happening in Atlanta, which is another city with absolutely terrible traffic. So,
You would know, yeah.
Granted, although no one's really going to Atlanta Hawks or any other of their teams' games, so that's probably not as big of a problem.
That's fair.
But no, this is awesome.
I agree. All right, that was it.
All right, so it's time for our concussion update. Every day, a large portion of athletes with a history of repetitive head trauma are battling with a progressive neurodegenerative brain disease called CTE. Symptoms of CTE include blurred vision, dementia, depression, headache, memory loss, and mood swings. There is no cure, and it only gets worse with time. This is the number one issue in sports, so every week we'll be updating you on what is happening in the world of concussion prevention. So this week, I wanted to highlight a new study that comes from the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, also known as CHIP, and the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention, otherwise known as the CDC, in the U.S. So it looks at activities children from the ages of 0 to 17 engage in on a daily basis and how they can result in concussions. So I think this is a really important report because we talk about how every week concussions can lead to all sorts of symptoms that are tough to correctly diagnose, especially if there isn't any awareness around the subject. And while that's all good for sports, there isn't maybe like if your child falls on the playground, they could have a concussion. You just don't know how to correctly identify it, or a doctor doesn't know how to correctly even draw the conclusion that a concussion could happen because they fell.
Mm-hmm. And it really can happen that quickly. Especially in children.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. So quickly here are the stats that stood out. The majority of concussions were related to sports and recreational activity at 70%, while 30% were due to non-sports and non-recreation activities. Only 40% of all concussions that were identified here came from contact sports. Researchers from the study examined about 1,500 children who were seen at CHIP's location, the hospital in Philadelphia. So this is how the study broke down the different categories. 40% was contact and collision sports and recreation like football, soccer, basketball, and hockey. 17% was limited contact sports and recreation like cheerleading, baseball, and softball, volleyball, and bike riding. Kind of surprised that volleyball is not higher.
Yeah.
13% was recreation and non-contact sports like recess, playing outside, gym class, and swimming. And then 30% was non-sports and recreation like falls, car accidents, and assault. So this is also intentional assault. Starting at the age of 5, the majority of concussions comes from sports or recreation. But before 5, the vast majority of concussions in infants, toddlers, and young children are non-sport related.
Well, that makes sense.
It does make sense. And then that number also does start to kind of level out a little bit when they get older, because as you introduce cars and car accidents and stuff like that, that also does seem to, bring some non-sports related ones. So what I really like about this report is that it really highlights how concussions don't just happen in sports. For instance, in the study, a pediatric primary care sports medicine specialist, that's a mouthful, at the Children's Hospital named Christina Masters says that we need to be aware of the fact that concussions also happen in life and not just sports, and that we need to have an appropriate index of suspicion for diagnosing these injuries. So, and then a specialist at the CDC named Juliet Harbour-Krupa, I'm sorry if I butchered that, added that the study tells us that we need to extend traumatic brain injury prevention and management out of youth sports so that we can ensure all children who sustain a concussion and receive the necessary care. So that's what I like about it, is it's just bringing awareness to the fact that concussions don't just happen in sports. Your child can just, accidentally hit their head on the monkey bars or something like that.
Yeah, or fall off the monkey bars.
Knock their head, they don't remember it, and they're like, oh, I have these symptoms, and you're like, oh, that may be a concussion. Maybe we should go to the hospital.
Yeah, and kids get over things so quickly too, right? Like they could fall in the morning at recess or something and cry about it for an hour and then go back to class and be fine or relatively fine, and then they completely forget about telling their parents that when they come home from school.
Yeah, and I think it's important too, and that's why in a lot of these reports and a lot of these studies and a lot of these conversations, it's talking about teachers being aware of it too.
Yes, absolutely.
Because, teachers are such a big part of children's lives, and we, definitely shouldn't be arming them with guns, but with knowledge. And this is And
we're back to our politics podcast.
Back to our politics podcast. This podcast is very large.
But no, I agree. And I mean, I wasn't exactly a child. I was 16, but I got a concussion concussion from being hit by a car. Like, it has nothing to do with sports. So, like, I totally get this. And I think for the most part, this research is very valid.
Yeah, no, so exactly. It's, again, sometimes it's not always going to be technology that we talk about here,
Right.
but it's like, it's just highlighting the awareness, because you should be aware of it. I mean, maybe your kid has suffered from a concussion and that's developed into symptoms that you don't know where they're from. They don't know where they're from, but it's because they sustained a head injury. And that doesn't necessarily need to happen in sports.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah, so that's it for our concussion update this week. On to our discussion.
All right, so for our discussion today, we're each going to highlight some cool tech in the world of health and fitness that we think could really make a difference in someone's life and could be worth checking out. So there have been a lot of injuries in pro sports recently, like Kyrie Irving has been out for the next couple months, and Canucks rookie Brock Boeser getting hurt just as he was becoming a favorite to win the Calder Trophy. So that really kind of sparked this thought in our minds of how technology could help people stay healthier. And so we wanted to focus on the health and fitness aspect of our show this week, but for the average people. Like, we spend a lot of time talking mostly about sports and pro athletes, so we wanted to highlight some things in the tech world that might be more readily available to everyone. So, Alex, do you want to kind of start off?
Yeah, so just to start, and we focus a lot on newer smartwatches and stuff like that, and you and I have talked a lot about how the health aspect of that is why that's really going to become an important aspect of smartwatches. So I kind of wanted to highlight a lot of health tracking wearables. So the first one I'm going to highlight is called it's a LiveCore Cardia Mobile. So basically, this allows you to take a medical grade EKG on your phone or through an Apple Watch. So you just open the Cardia app on your smartphone and put your fingers on the electrodes that are sold with it, and you can literally keep track of your heart rhythm. So these electrodes can either be this tiny thing you place on a table and then just put 2 fingers on from each of your hands, or on your Apple Watch's wristband. So plus, like most of these apps, you can share this info with your physician, and this is available for about $100 USD. So like what I really love about this app is that, like, my sister, when she was 19, had heart surgery. Like, my entire family has so many heart problems. Like, I've had numerous heart tests, and I'm 24.
Right.
So it's this type of stuff that's, if you do have to keep track of your health, this is a really cool way to do it. It's super small. Like, I really can't emphasize that enough. You could literally keep it on the like a bookshelf or on your drawer in your room or something like that. So I think it's really cool.
That is really cool.
That's my first one.
Yeah, and especially if you have like potential heart issues, or they run in your family, because they run in my family too. I mean, just having this on your shelf just for whenever you need to use it, that's a great idea. Yeah,
and you know what? This also gives another tool to doctors where they could be like, hey, if you want to keep more, keep better track of stuff in a simpler way, you could use something like this.
Right. Okay, and then I'll go into my second one, because I was looking at the disparities, I guess, between professional athletes and, us average daily humans. And I started looking at LeBron James, who apparently spends about $1.5 million on his body every year on things like cryotherapy, hyperbaric chambers, and personal trainers and chefs and all that sort of stuff. So I decided to look at whether there would be affordable options for the average person to take advantage of some of the techs that these stars use. And I mean, the long story short is that, yes, it is possible. So a bunch of athletes swear by cryotherapy, which is essentially immersing yourself in a cold environment for a short period of time, which is supposed to trick your body into survival mode. And it encourages your body to create more nutrient and oxygen-rich blood that can then flush out the toxins from your body once it warms up. And so you can get in either a one-person cryo chamber or a multiple-person cryo sauna for usually around 3 to 5 minutes. And the feeling is basically described as if you were standing in front of an open freezer naked. And so LeBron does this all the time. He's tweeted and Instagrammed about it, and so does Floyd Mayweather. But there are actually places across North America and probably across the world that offer these types of services to random people too, usually for around $60 a session. And so some researchers have said that some of this might be a myth, but there definitely needs to be more research done. So please do take all of this with a grain of salt. We are not medical experts. And a more common method of cryotherapy is the cold tub, which is exactly as it sounds. You basically sit in a tub full of ice to help your body recover. And Toronto Maple Leafs forward Patrick Marleau swears swears by it. You know, he's 38 and still scoring at a pretty incredible pace. So his argument for its benefits are pretty convincing. And you can also get cold boots that go around your legs that kind of do the same sort of thing as cryo chambers and cold tubs, but just at a smaller scale. And so those started around $150. So again, pretty affordable for the average person if you want to maybe try this out, increase some blood flow in your body and see if it does help. Because I mean, I think it does come down to personal preference.
Yeah, like I think we really can't, like LeBron I think is a cool standard in showing that it does actually work. There is some stuff to it because LeBron's he's 33 and having like his best statistical year ever.
Right.
Like the dude's killing it, and it's because he's taken so well, like just such good care of his body his whole life. And so yeah, it's like, okay, yeah, sure, this is not like, you know, I guess a medically sound, you know, like, oh, all doctors agree that this is going to help you.
It's not perfect
like
science.
It's definitely
like cupping.
It's definitely it's definitely still situational, and you have to see what works for you because all of our bodies are different.
Right.
But I think it's cool to see like these kind of really interesting and affordable things, because $60 for a session of this, I mean, granted, like you're not going to do this all the time, and that's still not like hella affordable, but like it's still pretty cool.
Yeah, it's worth at least trying out once to see if it works for you, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So my main show and tell piece was the Cardia EKG wearable. I also want to shout out Nokia's BPM Plus blood pressure monitor. Basically, this is just a blood pressure monitor that connects to an app on your smartphone. The most basic use is that you can easily keep track of your blood pressure and then easily share it with your doctor as well. So this one is also about $100 USD. And kind of what I liked about this, and I think there are some other ones out there on the market as well. I just like this idea that for instance, I had to keep track of my blood pressure for, I think it was like 2 or 3 weeks while I was going through a bunch of heart tests a year or two ago, something like that. And so like I just had like this ragged piece of paper I kept putting it down on.
Of course.
And so it'd be cool if you had an app that would track all of it and just keep it, like you just open the app and it does that. And I think that's a really cool way to be able to keep track of this sort of stuff. Also, if it's easier to share with your doctor that way as well, that also helps too. Yeah,
you could just email that to your doctor instead of giving him a scrap piece of paper with your like scribblings on it.
Which is exactly what I did.
No, that's cool. And I mean, like, we're all about accessibility and affordability and that sort of stuff. So I think that really goes along with that. And the last thing that I wanted to highlight was some sleep tech, because, I mean, sleeping is a huge part of how people stay healthy, and sleep deprivation can really lead to a number of health risks like heart disease and high blood pressure. And I mean, you don't have to get a hyperbaric chamber like LeBron. Devices like sleep trackers can really help you stay healthy as well. So at CES this year, which is a big tech show in Las Vegas every year in January, I believe, a company called Sleep Score Labs unveiled Max, a contactless device that sits on your bedside table and monitors sleep patterns through radio waves. And when you wake up, it gives you a sleep score and suggestions on how you can improve your sleep. And it's apparently even more accurate than an actual wearable or a phone app. You don't have to wear it. You don't have to bring your phone to bed. And it's actually cheaper than most wearables out there because it retails for about $150. And then continuing with the sleep tech just really quickly, there's also a smart headband out on the market that measures your brain waves and then plays a white noise using bone conduction to help you sleep. And this can apparently improve your deep sleep cycle by more than 30%, which I thought was fascinating. But this is also a little bit more expensive. The device designed by Yves Bahar retails for about $500. So
I've always been so uncomfortable about all like the bone conducting stuff, because you have like those like those headphones too that are like supposed to make things sound better and stuff, and I'm like, I don't need this.
But what if it works?
Sure, if it works, but it still sounds like I'm like, okay, let's have other people test it for like a decade and then I'll do it.
I mean, that's fair. Though that could lead to a concussion. We don't even know.
Yeah, which would be the opposite intention of what we are trying to do with this podcast. So no, but I really like all the sleep tracking stuff, because I do think sleep is super important. And for me, the reason why I've always struggled with it is I really hate wearing watches.
Right.
Or like I just don't wear anything on my wrists. Especially when I'm sleeping. Like I've tried, and I just can't. Like, it's just I struggle falling asleep. So it's like, oh, it's not actually help. It's like sure, it's tracking me struggle falling asleep because I'm wearing it. So it's cool to, if like you didn't have to wear it. I'm sure there are other people like me who don't like wearing things on their wrists.
Or you don't want to bring your phone into bed with you, right? And like that's not accurate anyways.
Yeah, like my phone's charging while I'm sleeping.
Yeah.
So
I think Max just kind of looks like a little like an alarm clock or something you just throw on your bedside table.
Yeah,
which is super easy.
Yeah, that would be awesome. So that's something cool, really cool to look in.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, that's it for today's episode. Thanks to everyone who listened. This was produced by the ITWC Podcast Network. And just a reminder that we're also now in a daily format. If you'd rather listen to us that way, you can also follow us on Twitter at ITV Tech and Sports, or our personal accounts at Mandy V. Kovacs and Alex T. Radu. So thanks everyone again. That was episode 38. Woo!
Yep, thank you.